need to stand up and give your name while you're...
I have to be able to record 10 people before and 10 people after.
Okay.
16, including the camera operator. So, all right, we'll begin. America has seen dark days in the past, but none so dark as the attack on mainland American soil on the morning of September 11, 2001. That morning, Al-Qaeda terrorists boarded 4 different American commercial airliners as passengers and then hijacked those commercial airliners, crashing them into the 2 World Trade Center towers, the Pentagon, and one that was forced to crash in the field in Pennsylvania. Airport security checkpoints were in use prior to that fateful day. An analysis of seat by name with a do not fly list were there. However, there were far too real deterrents in place to prevent and identify people quickly in the event of a terrorist act. That morning, and the studying of that events of that day forever changed the way passengers would be screened at airport security checkpoints. And it changed the way we thought about our own security in America. Americans were no longer free to be at ease in everything they did without the thought of safety from terrorism. Current regulations make it mandatory that every person that wishes to fly on a commercial flight in America undergo security screening by the Transportation Security Administration, which includes ID verification, luggage checked and screened. At security checkpoint, persons and carry-on luggage searched and screened. The audience will be persuaded of the importance of the security screening process and why it must be embraced as a necessary tool to combat terrorist acts. Not wanting to cooperate here. Always a possibility of little things that don't work in the computer world. The very reason enhanced airport security screening procedures were implemented were because of the events of 9/11. 4 American passenger airliners are hijacked on September 11, 2001, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This shows the towers before 9/11. American Airlines Flight 11 departs Boston, Massachusetts at 8 a.m. and crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. United Flight Airlines 175 departs Boston, Massachusetts at 8:14 a.m. and crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center at 9:03 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77 departs Dallas International at Virginia at 8:20 a.m. and crashes into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. American Airlines Flight 93 departs Newark, New Jersey, 8:42 a.m. It's forced to crash into a Pennsylvania field at 10:06 a.m. when the terrorists fly the aircraft are rushed by American passengers on board the airliner. Unfortunately, the above events happened because of a determined terrorist organization and because of a lackadaisical attitude towards security at America's airports. The other thing was failure to communicate between government agencies. A lot of things could have been changed that day if they would have just talked to one another. Prior to these events, terrorist acts against Americans had been happening on an ever-increasing rate overseas and then finally within the United States. April 18, 1983, bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, 63 killed. October 23, 1983, bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut, Lebanon, 241 U.S. Marines killed. September 20th, 1984, bombing of the U.S. Embassy Annex in Beirut, Lebanon, 14 killed. September 14, 1985, TWA-847 hijacked U.S. Navy diver, killed. December 21st, 1988, bombing of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, 217 Americans killed. October 12th, 2000, bombing of the USS Cole, 17 killed, at least 40 injured. Domestic attacks had begun. In 1993, terrorists drove a truck packed with 1,100 pounds of explosives into the basement parking garage at the World Trade Center. Ring a bell? The blast left a crater 22 feet wide and 5 stories deep. Only 6 people were killed in that, but 1,000 injured. The towers were repaired, cleaned, and reopened in less than a month. June 24th, 1993, an arrest of 8 subjects plotting to bomb New York landmarks. April 19th, 1995, bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building, 168 killed, 642 injured. And if you think it was only 2 people involved, you're seriously dead wrong. A commission was established to search out all of the events of 9/11 and testimony of personnel and witnesses involved to bring forth recommendations and solutions that would prevent such attacks from happening again. The solution was to increase security within America's borders, especially that of commercial air traveling public. The Administration of Transportation Security, TSA, was created after 9/11 events to protect the nation's transportation systems. The TSA takes over security screening of the nation's airports in November of 2001. They require that your shoes be removed in December of 2001. I'm sure we all remember that change. The TSA falls under the Department of Homeland Security in March 2002. They step up security screening, training of transportation security officers, and expand security checkpoints and equipment in all commercial airports in America. Lists are published about what the flying public is allowed to carry on in their luggage, and it's published nationwide. Cockpit access doors are hardened and by regulation do not get opened in flight. There was one point where we used to fly when the captain or the first officer would come out and greet those that were on the plane. That is forever gone. Constant updates to security procedures, training and facial recognition technology, and explosive detection continued and have increased since 9/11. Continued terrorist activities in ever-increasing numbers has caused the implementation of advanced pat-down procedures and full-body scanners. Enhanced pat-down procedures and full-body scanners were instituted prior to November 2010. Initial complaints from the flying public state that the enhanced pat-down procedures and full-body scans are an invasion to privacy. Just so you can see, you see where the gun is in the back. This shows quite a bit here, the reason I blocked out some. The new security scanners, however, show an outline and just give a hint if there is something that needs to be screened in a more intense fashion. It lets the screener know where that's at, and there's no longer any naked-looking people being seen in these scans. Another picture of a full-body scanner. When a person steps in, the scan gets done. One person is watching that scanner screen, and nobody else is. This man. You recently heard something about SEAL Team 6. This man was the founder of SEAL Team 6, Dick Marcinko. Had I not seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. I watched this man go through a metal detector. The SEAL Team 6 came over to do training with us over in Sigonella, Sicily. I watched this man in 1986 walk through a most sensitive setting on a metal detector at our base airport there with 5 pistols on his body. Did not set it off. He wore a knee brace. He had done it so many times and had perfected, so he drug it just right. None of the weapons were ever seen until he pulled them out, one by one. He had a belly holster here, ankle holster on each ankle, had a weapon in the back on both sides. 3 9mm, 145, and 138, fully loaded. In an article titled Heightened TSA Security is Necessary to Keep Us Safe that was published in U.S. News and World Report on December 20th, 2002, Jeff Searle, a former official with the Transportation Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security, stated, "The Transportation Security Administration's new airport screening procedures, body scanning machines, and enhanced pat-downs are justified in the context of our unfortunate reality." As I mentioned earlier, the enhanced pat-down procedures are slightly modified. The software for the full-body scanners are changed so as not to be so revealing. But in order for terrorism to do its job, it must put fear into the hearts of those that seek to do harm. We must not fear terrorism. We need to take vigilant, everyday steps to combat its intent. As a continued solution, we as Americans must be involved in our own security. We are all responsible for watching over our own house. That is, the country that we call home, America. A quote, don't you just love computers? A quote from Edmund Burke states, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing." So do we stand by and do nothing, thereby becoming part of the problem? Or do we put up with a little inconvenience to ensure that this tragedy does not happen again? Quick story before I finish this. When 9/11 happened, when I'd come up to a security checkpoint, because I was flying with the Department of Corrections, going to different places and working on things here in the state, I used to hate going to those because I served this country for over 20 years in security. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why should I have to do that? Well, it's my responsibility, regardless of how or where or what I've done, to be vigilant. And I should have just, and I finally did after a period of time. It took me a period of time. But after I finally did, I welcomed it. I would rather be safe than sorry. The once idealistic thinking of perfect safety from terrorism within America's borders no longer exists. We must set the example to the world that airport security procedures are there to help stamp out terrorism for good, and not whine to the world that enhanced security screening procedures, such as full-body scanners and pat-downs, are an invasion of privacy. Let it be known by the example of Flight 93 that any terrorist that tries to come against Americans will be met with force and resolve over oppressive terrorist acts. As Todd Beamer said it on that day on Flight 93, let's roll. These are confiscated items that get confiscated probably on a daily basis at almost every airport in America. Now, what could those do? A lot of damage to a lot of people on board an aircraft. We will not fear any man or any terrorist organizations but God alone. And is printed on our monetary bills, "In God we trust." And it is in God we trust. Nobody else. Nobody else can keep us safe but Him alone and His protection. So next time you go to the airport and you go through a security screening process, think about it as not being an inconvenience for you, even though it may be. Think about it as being protection from those that would try to do you harm. Thank you. And we need to get people, as we stand back, make sure that you're all here. Okay. Been recorded before, after? End of speech.